a mom was beating her child, and she went to jail for that. She went to jail for that. And I was like, oh my God, she went to jail for that. This is so common over here. Like you spill milk and you get a good beating from your parents.
Indians are doing so well here. Honestly, if you
Yeah.
go to any hospital here in the US, you will see Indian doctors.
Mhm.
It's very, very obvious that even here in the US, Indian parents are pushing their children into those roles.
Is
But
that really the case in the US? If you want to buy, you have to buy a house from your parents. You don't inherit it naturally. Yes. Maybe if you could teach me one or two so that the audience that are watching this video can become a little more natural when it comes to speaking English. So,
mm,
Kyle, as you are on my channel for the first time, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself for the audience, please?
sure. First of all, thank you for the invite, Niyati. My name is Kyle, and I have a YouTube channel called Pensando Inglés, which is Spanish for thinking English. And what I do on my channel is I make videos of comprehensible input, which is where I speak slowly and clearly so that English learners can learn like we learn our first languages, like when our parents are speaking to us when we're children. So it's a very fun and natural way to learn. And I've really enjoyed being able to help people around the world to improve their English.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel's journey? What made you
Hmm.
make the videos about real life English rather than following the traditional path that a lot of English teachers follow, such as teaching grammar and going into that technical stuff?
Of course, my YouTube channel is based on my journey as a language learner. Now, I'm obviously a native English speaker, so I didn't have to learn English. But I found myself in a situation where I needed to learn Spanish. I was surrounded by Spanish speakers. I met somebody whose family only spoke Spanish. So I found myself in a place where I needed to learn a language quick. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of English learners around the world can relate with this. So, first thing I did was try what everybody else does. I got on my phone and I looked at Duolingo, for example, and other applications like that. And I was using them, but I still could not understand all of these Spanish speakers around me. I could say, hello, my name is Kyle, but that was about it. So I kept looking and kept looking to find the right way to learn a language quick. And it all changed for me when I found a YouTube channel called Dreaming Spanish. And Dreaming Spanish is a YouTube channel about learning Spanish through comprehensible input. So once I found this channel, I started watching so many videos, hours and hours every day, and I found myself starting to understand. And I realized, wow, wait a minute. This is how you learn a language. So after about a year of listening to Dreaming Spanish and speaking with the Spanish speakers in my life, I was having real, deep, meaningful conversations like this in Spanish. And I was like, wow, so many people spend years and they can't speak the language, right?
Yeah.
And here I am 1 year later and I'm completely fluent. I could have a deep conversation. So I thought, this is how you learn a language. I need to make content like this in my language to help people who want to learn English. So that's where it started.
And the good thing about your channel is that it's not only teaching you real life English, but also for people like me, like adventure seekers, you come across things like camping. I think you uploaded it 2 days ago. I enjoyed the video a lot. And wow, like I could never think of doing that all alone by myself. It was fun to watch, but you're also learning English with that. So
Hmm.
because for me personally, it's like if I know that I'm learning something, my brain would resist that so much. But watching videos like yours, you are learning, you don't even realize you're learning, and while keeping yourself entertained. And I
Hmm.
love that about your channel. Thank you so much for creating content like that for people like us.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a beautiful compliment because when you feel like you're in just a real life conversation,
Mm,
or a real life situation, like you said, you're learning without thinking about it. And that's when it really sticks in your mind. And
yeah,
that's why in my videos, I always say, hey guys, it's your English speaking friend, Kyle, because it should feel like I'm just a person in your life who speaks English. It's not a lesson. It's not a
mm,
classroom. We're just going out into the woods and camping, or
yeah,
we're cooking an awesome dish, or we're learning about a culture. So yeah, that's the real life aspect about it. I really just share my real life in a way that English learners can understand, and it's worked out really well for me,
yeah.
and people seem to enjoy it, and a lot of people tell me it's helping them, so I am more than happy to do it.
Yeah, I love that. So one thing that I love about having conversations with others is that we're able to exchange ideas and culture, and I love that. So I would love to know a little bit about the US, and I could share a little bit about India if you're okay with that.
Of course, I love culture as well, so I'm happy to.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a lot of things, but the most basic thing that comes to my mind is the education system. Now, I would tell you a little bit about India. So we have a very structured, rigid path in India. You go to school, you go to college, and then you get a job. Drop years are not so common in India. Pursuing your passion as a career is even more rare. um and yeah, it's that's about that. So Indian parents play a very crucial role when it comes to deciding your career. It's mostly you become an engineer or a doctor in India, nothing less than that. They don't even take you seriously if you it's like you can't even go to your parents and say, I want to become an artist. I want to become a painter. And they would say, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way. No way. Absolutely not. Because they think a lot about what society would think. And so, and they do not want you to take the risk. They want you to follow a very safe path. What's the case in the US? Is it that structured or rigid, or like, is it more on the flexible side?
A little bit of both, and it really depends on where your family falls on the social ladder, whether you are more towards the lower income, more
Yeah.
towards the poverty level, the middle class, upper middle class. Um, I grew up in a completely middle class family. My dad worked on cars, so there was never a huge pressure for me to become a doctor or an engineer. So I really had my own path to choose what I wanted to do in life, and I consider myself an artist. I
Hmm.
first tried to make a uh, an attempt of doing something with my life with music. That didn't work out. Later, I found languages and have been able to have a little bit of success with this. But when you get to the upper middle class and the wealthy people of the United States, they definitely are probably pushing their children a little bit more towards law or being a doctor or something like that, or finances.
Hmm.
But it is nowhere near as strict as I think it is in India. And you can even see that Indian cultural pressure here in the US because Indians are doing so well here. Honestly, if you
Yeah.
go to any hospital here in the US, you will see Indian doctors.
Mhm.
It's very, very obvious that even here in the US, Indian parents are pushing their children into those roles. But hey, they're having huge success. Many American CEOs are of companies of American companies are Indian as well, even YouTube.
Yeah. Like the earliest culture shock kind of a thing that I remember is that I don't know if it's true or not, But I heard this from my mom when I was, I think, 4 or 5. She was reading a newspaper, and now I don't know if this is about the US or some other country, but she told me that a mom was beating her child, and she went to jail for that. She went to jail for that. And I was like, oh my God, she went to jail for that. This is so common over here. Like you spill milk and you get a good beating from your parents. You don't get good marks, you get a good beating from your parents. So it's very common. Although I think newer parents are no, I don't want to call them softies. No, softies is not the right word. Sorry. But you get it. What I'm saying, right? They don't do
Absolutely.
that much of they don't have that much of strictness.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was pretty shocking for me that you go to jail for something that is so common in India.
Now that probably was an American newspaper article because here some people maybe will spank their kids, on their butt or something, but if you beat your kids badly, you will definitely, people will call the police. The schools even call police on parents.
Hmm.
If a child goes to school and says, "Oh, my arm hurts because my mom hit me," or something. So discipline here is definitely cannot be so strict in this modern age. Now, if you ask my parents or my grandparents, they will say, "Oh, my dad hit me with a belt when I did
Hmm.
bad," and things like that. But yeah, I've actually I've read and seen things about the punishment in India and how it is super strict. So, may I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Because of that punishment and discipline, do you respect your parents or is it almost like a fear?
Um, it's actually a mixture of both. So the respect comes not from the beating, but it's that we are supposed to respect our elders. The
Hmm.
elder the person is, the more you have to respect them. What they say goes in the family. It can come to as deep as choosing your life partner, choosing the person that you
Hmm.
marry. For example, there's a grandma or a great grandma in the house, and then she gets the saying, she gets to decide who you get to marry. So then it's not up to you anymore, because she's the elder one. You have to respect her decisions, and a lot of times they are wrong, but then that's how we are
Hmm.
raised. And it's not just India. I think this thing runs throughout the Asia, respecting
Hmm.
your elders and not questioning them. And China is even a more extreme case of India.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's how things are. But no, we do respect them. uh, I guess a lot of the way, the upbringing and everything, we do respect them a lot, but it's not because of the beating. But yes, we are also scared of them, of doing something wrong. Now my
Hmm.
parents are very lenient. They told me you can choose whatever career you want. And it was me who chose engineering, and it was also me who dropped out of engineering. I completed my bachelor's, but then I did not want to go into master's. And they were completely okay with this. And that's how I started
Oh,
my YouTube channel, actually.
well, very
Yeah.
cool.
Okay. So coming to parents, there's one question that comes to my mind. So I am a huge fan of The Office US. Maybe you've heard of it. I love it so
My favorite
much.
show. Me too.
Yay! Yay, I'm so happy to hear that. So there's this character called Jim in the show, and I remember that scene. It stood out to me. He was saving up because he wanted to purchase his parents' house so that they could retire and he could settle there with Pam. It was very, very, very surprising for me because that's not how things run in India. It's like you inherit everything. It's a by default thing. It's like, oh yeah, great property. Like you're gonna inherit it from your parents anyway.
Hmm.
Like that's a by default. And it's a newspaper if you don't inherit it. Because what happened? You were supposed to get the property. Is that really the case in the US? If you want to buy, you have to buy a house from your parents. You don't inherit it naturally.
Well, That also depends on where you are in the financial structure. You know, if your parents have a lot of money or if they're more poor.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your parents have a lot of money, they probably own their house
Yeah.
and then they will give it to you when they pass away. But if your parents don't have money, the bank owns the house and your
Oh,
parents are paying on a loan. That I see by your face that that sounds strange to you,
yeah.
but in the American culture, most people do not own the home that they live in. Most people
Okay.
are paying on a loan from the bank. Our housing situation here is really bad.
Hmm.
So, for example, your parents are paying on a loan for their house. Let's say they pass away, they probably still owe money on that house.
Hmm.
So you don't just get the house, you have to pay the rest of the money for the house to get it.
Hmm.
So that maybe was something like the situation with Jim. Maybe his parents didn't own the house, so he had to pay the money that they owed the bank. Does all that make sense?
Kind of. I do know. I didn't know about this, but I do know about the how the medical system works in the US. It's pretty expensive.
Hmm.
Because for India, that's not the case. It's available, and you don't have to take appointment. For example, like you take appointment for something very basic, and then you come back after 5 months. That's not the case in India. That was very odd to me actually, because you have the problem right now. How are you managing
Hmm.
everything for like 5 months straight? Because
Hmm.
in a day or two, you can get a doctor, get the prescription, and just get the solution.
Hmm.
So it's in India, it's very affordable. The medical system, at least, is the best.
Okay. I actually just made a recent video about poverty here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And something that shocked everybody was how expensive it is here. Because so many people think, okay, they hear a number that an average family maybe makes 60,000 US dollars a year at their job, and they think, oh, wow, in my currency, that's a lot of money.
Hmm.
But I showed them how much money it costs just my family to live in our house every month. And they could not believe that, it costs, let's say, $2,000 just to pay for the mortgage or the loan on the house. And then some people pay up to $1,000 a month for medical insurance and then $100 for their phone bill. So just because you make a lot of money here does not mean you have a lot of money because it is so expensive to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, one of my friend, she went to the US recently. Now she comes from a rich family. She has like two or three servants working for her over here in India, but in the US she's struggling a lot and she's questioning whether to stay there or not. So it's like you have to kind of like choose between this comfortable lifestyle in India, or you get to live your quote unquote American dream, but then you have to struggle a lot. So that's what people decide between when they choose to move abroad.
Hmm.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about the about lifestyle and hobbies? So, like, for you also, you went camping or you go hiking. When I ask somebody from the US, they're like, "Oh, I love going on long walks. I love going for hiking. I love exploring places." And it's like, wow, how does this passion come? This one I'm genuinely curious about. Like, how are you so much? Obviously, I'm not generalizing, but I see so many channels from the US making videos about camping, hiking, exploring abandoned places. How does this come? Because this is very rare in India.
That's interesting to know that that's a shock for you. For me, I feel so comfortable outdoors in nature that something just pulls me out there. I have to go out there. I love it. I feel like mental peace when I'm out there. But um, I think hobbies are very important here because the work life is pretty stressful.
Hmm.
So I work a lot and I have a lot of hobbies, but it's interesting that you say that about the Indians culture that your parents kind of tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And to me, if my parents were telling me what to do all the time. When I had my free time, I would go and do all of the things that I want to do to have a break from it.
Hmm.
But maybe there's some sort of pressure that you're like a bad child, a bad son or daughter if you do that over there.
It's more like it all comes down to what will the society say.
Hmm.
It's your neighbors that are not even paying your bills are
Hmm.
giving suggestions to your parents. They're like, oh, they should do this. They would get respected, high salary. People chase a job that gives them respect in India.
Now, I think there's really in the American culture, there's like an adventurous spirit. And that's something like hiking and camping and things like that are huge here
Hmm.
because, that was kind of what the country was founded on was people coming from Europe, from all over the world coming here. And before all of these cities were here, this was a giant forest. This was mountains. This was giant lakes. So these people came here and they had to explore and they had to live outside and they had to be strong and deal with nature. So I think that just stayed in the culture throughout all the years. Um, and I feel it inside of me. I have to do things like that camping video. And I'll be honest, I was scared out there because there were
Hmm.
animals making scary noises, and there are animals out there that eat other animals.
Hmm.
So there's
Yeah.
bears and things like that. But it was a very great experience.
I live in a city called Jodhpur. It's in a state called Rajasthan, area-wise the biggest state of the country. And my city is known for forts and palaces. If you're into like museums, ancient stuff, a lot of foreigners come here and visit. And because I've been born and raised here, I know the ins and outs of it. How Indians enter a fort and how they explore it versus how someone from the outside explores it. For example, an Indian family, and there's an American family, both entered the fort at the same time. Both the families are there to explore the fort. And so what I've noticed is that the Indian family explores the fort, comes back, and the American family is just halfway because Indians are like, okay, nice place. One by one, everybody would stand there, click, click, click. They click the photos of themselves, not the fort, by the way. It's very rare that they click the photos of just the fort. And they come back, that's it. However, the foreigners are here like, okay, but what is this material made of? What was the king like? And what was the nature of the children of the king? They are so much into this. And it's sometimes it's unbelievable how we don't ask the question how and why. How does this come in the Americans? This curiosity, is it taught in schools? Are children encouraged to ask the question how and why?
I don't know if it's taught or if it's more of a cultural thing, once again, that American spirit of adventure. And I think for so long, the idea of American freedom was
Hmm.
taught. So instead of being in a box of this is what you're supposed to do, maybe children are encouraged to look out and be more curious and find out things like that. But that's interesting that you say that about the Indian people that they would take pictures of themselves rather than enjoying the experience because
Hmm.
that's something I've noticed with my wife as well, and she's actually from Colombia, so she's South American. When I went to Colombia with her, her and her family are taking so many pictures, but of
Hmm.
themselves. And I don't even have my phone out. I like to be in the moment.
Yeah.
So maybe that is part of the ingrained culture,
Yeah.
that freedom, that curiosity, that adventure of being in the moment, being in the adventure rather than just taking a picture. I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about, but
Hmm.
I certainly encourage my son to be curious and to always be learning, and that's something that is a huge part of my life.
Hmm. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about slangs. I'm not talking about the regular slangs that you might be using, but I'm talking more about Gen Z slangs. But like, as a Gen Z, I don't really use them. I guess maybe because I'm on the older side of Gen Zs. Like the slangs like Riz or no cap, or so I feel like a grandma. I have to Google every time they come up with a new slang. And I feel concerned about how things would be when I get older, when I'm like 60 or 70, because these slangs come up so fast and they're gone just as fast. Because now I don't see anybody using Riz anymore. If anybody's using Riz now, they're like, are you a grandpa? They use this UNC unk for like uncle, short for uncle. And
Hmm.
I'm like, what? How is like English language is changing so fast for these younger kids? Um, Pretty concerning. What's your thought on this?
Yeah, I'm 34 years old, so I'm a little bit past the Riz and the no cap stuff, but
Hmm.
my son is 10, so he
Yeah.
keeps me young. So, I get to stay kind of current with the slang through my son, but it is always changing, like you said. As soon as I learn the new slang and I try and say it to him, he says, "Dad, nobody says that anymore. Don't say
Hmm.
that."
Yeah.
So the English language is certainly constantly, well, I won't say evolving. I think it's
Yeah.
devolving. I think it's going
Hmm.
down. Because, in the past, we got our English from Shakespeare and, wonderful authors, geniuses, and now we're getting it from people on TikTok and Instagram. So that's definitely what's causing it is everybody is living their life now on this
Hmm.
instead of in great books. People in their free time here, most people are not picking up a wonderful book written by a genius, a literary masterpiece. They're sitting there for hours scrolling TikTok and watching people they shouldn't be watching, people who are not
Hmm.
geniuses. And
Yeah.
it's really sad to me to see how the English language is devolving. And I try my best to speak in a way that, does my language justice. And I try my
Hmm.
best to tell my son, no, don't say that, say this instead, because, I'm an English YouTuber. I can't have my son walking around saying things in English
Hmm.
that somebody shouldn't say. So you're definitely right. It's always changing, and unfortunately, it's not getting better.
Yeah. And the change is concerningly fast because I agree. I mean, we don't speak the old English anymore, that Shakespeare English anymore, but it evolved pretty slowly. People could adjust. But now it's so fast. It goes within like a month or two. Nobody's using that anymore. And the way it's changing, it's very concerning. So I'm just very scared for when I get older because I would have to rely so much on my kids or my grandkids to understand, or maybe they wouldn't even understand regular English anymore. Maybe they'll just have invented their own form of English, and we will be coexisting together, but we really wouldn't understand each other. It's pretty scary, but it's what I notice. It's this is only happening in English because in Hindi everything is normal. It's always been the same way. Kids here are not really making their own slangs, and I don't think that's the case for any other language as well. I think it's only the English language, and maybe because how much influence there is of the US on social media, I guess that could be the reason.
I think so. I definitely think so. And probably also the discipline thing. Maybe a strict Indian parent would not be happy if their kid was saying the equivalent of cap and riz in Hindi. So
Yeah.
maybe they're keeping that language protected by that strict discipline.
Hmm. Yeah, could be so. Okay. So, as a wrap-up question, I always love to know the slangs. Not talking about these Gen Z, Gen Alpha slangs. I'm talking about the regular American slangs. Maybe if you could teach me one or two so that the audience that are watching this video can become a little more natural when it comes to speaking English.
Hmm. Okay, I could have let's see. I wish I would have prepared for this. So you gotta, I just did one right there. Gotta. That's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a slang, but
Yeah.
words like that are so important. Gotta means, it actually means I have to. It's a very
Hmm.
casual way of saying I have to. I gotta go do this. And that's
Yeah.
not a very proper way to speak, but you will hear that constantly.
Hmm.
Things like that. Gonna means going to, have to. We put a lot of words together, and that can be confusing for
Hmm.
English learners. So that's one thing. Wanna means want to.
Hmm.
Things like that are essential. Um, Things we call our friends. Sometimes we'll say dude, bro, pal, buddy. Things like that you need to know. Let's see. Hmm. You know what? Like I said, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm 34 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually read books still. So
Hmm.
maybe I'm not the guy to ask about slang, but my
Makes sense.
recommendation is things like that, contractions, and when we put two words together,
Hmm.
compound words, we might call them gonna, wanna, have to, shoulda, should've, things like that are
Hmm.
key in understanding a conversation on the streets here.
Yep, makes sense. And you're probably using slangs all the time, but they are so natural and in your everyday vocabulary that you can't really think of them. Because if you ask me for Hindi slangs, I'd be like, what slangs? But
Hmm.
I'm using them all the time. Yeah, that makes sense. But thank you so much, Kyle, for being on my channel and that little exchange. It was wonderful, and I am so sure that people are going to learn a lot from you. Um, and anybody watching, they can subscribe to Kyle's channel. I will tag it in the description. And yeah, thank you so much for joining.
It was a pleasure speaking with you and everybody out there. Thanks, guys, for spending your time with us.
Okay, thank you so much, Kyle, and have a great morning.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye bye.